Morning. Here is a pair of Gale loudspeakers. They are the GS210s. I think they were made in the late 70s, something like that. They're not in very good condition at all. It's a pair of speakers I've brought for the drivers, not to refurbish or do anything with. I hardly paid anything for them. You can pick these up dirt cheap. But I thought while I had them I would do the normal kind of run through with them. I've shot a little video on the measurements which are quite interesting, so I'll put that up after we have an initial look. So yeah, just a small bookshelf speaker. In fact, we'll give them a measure up. Height wise, 39 centimeters, which is 15.5 inches. Width, 20.5 centimeters, 8 inches, and depth 22 centimeters, just over 8.5 inches. So yeah, they're a two-way design, and we've got a grill there, which is kind of a fibre board with the pegs that push in, and there we have the drivers. So this is the reason I bought these, really, for the CAS tweeters. This is one of my favourite, and I've got a few uses for these. I've actually got quite a collection of these, but I've got a number of projects I want them in. And we have a treated paper cone woofer, which is in good condition. I'm not too sure whether that's made by CAS as well. We'll have a look when we take it apart. But yeah, it's a thin chipboard box. Yeah, really hollow. Awful. And that ringing really came through when I did the measurements. So, banana plugs at the back. These have consecutive serial numbers. Not that that really means a great deal with these. They are a chipboard frame, like I say, or chipboard box, vinyl wrapped. Yeah, and there's nothing I'm going to salvage with these. So yeah, like I say, a two-way design. Probably crossover frequency is around 3,500 hertz, but it's very full of holes, as you'll see in the measurements. So yeah, let's take a look inside. Right, so I've shot all the measurements for these Gale speakers, and I thought I'd talk you through them because they're fairly interesting, really. If you tap on the cabinets, they ring like hell. I haven't taken them apart at this point. I've just put them on the stands, and I'm just measuring them before I take them apart and look at them. And I doubt there's any sound deadening. If there is, there won't be much inside, but the sidewalls of the cabinets ring like hell. So the first thing I do is shoot both of them on axis, 1 meter on tweeter axis. And this is the frequency response we've got. So I'm measuring from 200 hertz up to 20 kilohertz, gated, so it negates the room to a degree. And as you can see, 85 dB, 90 dB, we're pretty good. And then we have this enormous suck out. This will be where the crossover point is, here somewhere. So our tweeter's rolling off very early, and our woofer is rolling off very early. If not, there's a big time alignment problem, because you can see here how out of phase the drivers are at this point, hence the big suck out in the response. And if we look at the other speaker, we've basically got the same thing. If I compare both of them together, on axis this is, just turn all these other measurements off, they are kind of doing the same thing. It's just, yeah, they're kind of doing the same thing, which is good in some ways. They're quite well matched. Again, we haven't looked at the crossover or anything yet. But if we start looking at the off-axis measurements, so if we go 10 degrees horizontal, basically the same sort of thing. Now if we go 20 degrees horizontal, maybe a little bit better, but not quite. So again, back to our on axis. Now things change quite a lot when you go vertically off axis, and this is quite interesting really. So 10 degrees above the tweeter, things kind of improve a little bit in the mid-range. In this frequency from a kilohertz up to 5, this dip is beginning to come out. So on axis again, huge suck out, and 10 degrees above the tweeter, a bit better. And we can see the phase relationship between the two drivers has improved. Now if we go 10 degrees below the tweeter, things get much better. We are still dipping and coming up a little bit, but as I've said before, if you want a dip in the response, this is probably where you want it, where the shoutiness can be in a speaker. So really looking at the measurements to listen to these, you would have to have the tweeters higher than your ear level, and then they kind of sum up fairly well. Whether that's intentional or whether it's just a lucky coincidence, I don't know, but you can see our phase relationship has changed. We've got a phase change here, which is possibly to do with the baffle. But yeah, I think our crossover point is probably about 3K, because the C's tweeter that they've got in there won't play very low. So that might be the reason why they've struggled on axis, which is where you'd reference your measurements when you were designing your crossover. Maybe the woofer just won't play high enough to meet the tweeter, and the tweeter won't play low enough to meet the woofer. I've used this tweeter quite a bit, and really 4K, you're pushing it. You see it in a lot of Rogers designs where it hands off at about 3,500 hertz to the woofer, and I think with this design they've just struggled to make it work. If we look at spectral decay, there is a lot of ringing from 300 hertz up to about 1500 hertz. That's the cabinet. You only have to rap on it with your knuckles and it's just hollow. So that's where that's coming from. In terms of distortion, they're pretty clean. So it'll be interesting to see what we find in the crossover, component-wise, quality-wise. But yeah, if you have a pair of these, you've probably found that you're better off listening to them below the tweeter, because they'll sum up a bit better. But yeah, they're a bit of a strange speaker really. But yeah, I thought I'd talk you through the measurements on this one, because they're reasonably interesting. Yeah, one last thing, near field bass, pretty good to 100 hertz, and then we roll off. Our 6 dB down point is about 60 hertz, 65 hertz. So yeah, I'll stick this up at the end as a picture. Right. So like I say, the reason I bought these really is for these tweeters. The boxes, they're a nice little compact speaker. Something could definitely be done with them, but it's just a chipboard box. It's not worth it really. You know, we could brace them to get rid of the ringing, but yeah, these aren't something I'm doing anything with. I'm just robbing the drivers. But while they were here, I thought we'd have a look. Push that out from the back. Quite a fan of this tweeter, as I've mentioned before. It's really 4,000 hertz and upwards is its usable band. It does get used lower in a lot of speakers. Rogers tended to use it down to about 3.5 or maybe 3 kilohertz, which is kind of its comfortable region. You couldn't run it any lower. Right. Right, there's our woofer. Teeny tiny wires. So yeah, I don't know who that's made by. It's a paper cone, doped on the front. The woofer itself didn't measure too badly actually, but yeah, stamped steel frame. Soldered connections, which is nice to see. Steel wire probably. There we go. So, what was this, 6-inch? Yeah, so 6-inch woofer. Okay, so we do have quite a bit of filling in here, but nothing on the cabinet sidewalls or back to dampen those. Oh. Okay, the crossover explains our measurements. Right, let's take our tweeter off. Woofer. Yep, so looks the same, but isn't. Okay, that's a bit of a bum, but that's okay. This is still a decent tweeter. And it's still usable for what I want. Okay, we'll take the back panel off and we'll be able to have a look at the crossover. Right, so there's our binding cup, and on the back of that is our crossover. And yeah, that's pretty crap really. So we've got first order on the woofer and the tweeter. Little air core inductor on the woofer. So yeah, that's not too bad, but the cap on the tweeter, which is where all your detail and clarity is going to come from, is the cheapest of the cheap. So that explains an awful lot, and it's such a shame because that is quite a good driver. I doubt that's particularly bad, but for the sake of a couple more quid, this could have been really improved. So yeah, I'll try and pop this cap off and we'll see what the value is. Right, 3.3 microfarad. The bog standard, I don't want to bother doing any measurements or anything, just stick a 3.3 on your tweeter. So yeah, let's just for laughs see how they're holding up. Right, let's do our inductor first. So we got 171.8 microhenry, so 0.17 millihenry. Yeah, sorry about that, I just had to take a delivery. Yeah, so 0.17 millihenry on our little air core inductor, and our cap is 4.6 microfarad. So yeah, 50% out. So, and that's a kilohertz, which is, yeah, where we'd be using it. So yeah, not great. So if there was a few of these out there, I'd be tempted to do a little exchange upgrade kit for this, but you know, revoice it a bit. But yeah, there's nothing of use here really. Let's just have a look at our drivers. So this is 8 ohm apparently. I'm sure it is. 6.1. Quite inductive, the coil in that. Don't normally see it that high. And our tweeter, .7. So yeah, there you go. A look inside and a tear down, but I'm doing nothing with these. But I thought while I had them here, I'd do a quick video. All right, cheers, thanks for watching.